Shall we start, sir?
Yeah.
I think people will get connected, join. Once we'll start, maybe. Okay, sir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, Before we move on, I request all the participants to keep their audio and video off throughout the session for any technical disturbances, except our esteemed panelist. For your queries, you can post your questions in the chat box. Later on, I can bring to them to the concerned speaker. Thank you. Revered founder and president SBM University, Professor Dr. Biswajit Patnaik, sir, widely called as management guru across the globe. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Kalyan Shankar Ray, respected Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Falgu Niranjana, esteemed resource persons over the webinar, or the participants, my faculty friends and dear students. I, Dr. Kaushik Bhuya, humbly welcome you all to the 33rd webinar of ASBM University, Bhubaneswar, on the theme, The Art of Business English in Multilingual India. As a matter of fact, we are fortunate to have the gracious presence of our three renowned speakers for the session. They are the masters in their respective fields, and it is a profound moment for me, at least, to listen to them on a topic which has reached interdisciplinary and global perspectives in every spheres of academic as well corporate sector. Our first speaker for the session is Dr. P. Bhaskaran Nair. Dr. Nair is a former teacher of English language teaching, Pondicherry Central University. He is an author, editor, and freelance teacher educator. With his PhD in English language teaching from EFL University, Hyderabad, earlier called as CIEFL, and with 53 years of extensive research and teaching experience, 12 years in schools, 18 years in colleges, and 20 years in universities. Dr. Nair is the three-time consecutive recipient of the Best Teacher Award at Pondicherry Central University in the year 2011, 2012, and 2013. Over 300 plus appearances in research journals, books, course books, workshops, seminars, and symposiums. He is an institution in himself. He is also the founder president of a professional organization that is called as English Language Teachers Interaction Forum, LTAFE, which publishes quarterly journal called as the Journal of LTAFE, soon to be UGC listed, or which works for the empowerment of rural India through English language education program. Currently, Dr. Nair is working on 6 research books, course books, particularly in English language and literature, which has to be prescribed by many Indian universities, including universities of Madras. We are so delighted to have you, sir. I now request Dr. Nair to give a talk for the webinar purpose. Sir, please.
Thank you, Kaushik. At the outset, let me thank the university, its authorities, including Vice Chancellor, and the department for this opportunity to interact with the young minds, which may keep people like us too a little younger, interacting with the young people. The title of the topic is The Art of Business English. From a broader perspective, I would like to personally add the art and science of business communication, or prioritizing, it may be better if we put it like this: the science and art of communication. That's what I think. Anyway, maybe my younger colleagues, Dr. Chatterjee and Dr. Aroraji, will definitely touch upon the science part of it too, because the art and science part are inseparable. But let me look at the parallelisms which I noticed recently. I'm not a specialist in business communication as such. I'm a general Englishman, teaching English language, literature, a little bit of linguistics, and all those things. not specialized in business English as such. So from this broader perspective, when I look at this business communication before coming to business English, business English is embedded in business communication. Business and communication share the three major components between them. Let us begin with business. In business, we have a product. The product can be either a concrete object, a capsule, a tablet, a packet of milk, a plastic toy, anything. The product is at the center of the whole business. Everything is in the periphery. And on this concrete product is there, and then we have an abstraction too in terms of a product. You have an idea, you have a formula, you have a concept, you have a solution to a problem, you have a way of thinking. That also is a product. It is your own product, either individual or collective. The university's, product, a department's product, a company's product. So a product can be either in the form of a concrete object, tangible, or an abstraction. Then on the one side of the product, you have the proud owner, the proud possessor of that product. Yes, we made it. This three-wheeler, our department, our students invented for the better convenience of the disabled. It has these and advantages. So the department of, motor engineering may be the proud owner, the possessor of a product. Well, I have an idea. Three people are here. We have something to sell to you. We three of us are here. We think that we have some products to deliver to the young minds at the university. So a possessor, a proud owner also is there. Then thirdly, a prospective buyer is there somewhere out in the field. We don't know where exactly that prospective buyer is. We are going to find. So with these three components, a business works. Any business. Ideational, concrete, anything. Political. Politics also is a business. We sell ideas. Now, as I pointed out earlier, the parallelism between business and communication. Yeah. In communication too, we have a product. That's why I'm sitting before you. I'm interacting with you from a far-off place, Kerala. By the way, all young students, welcome to my place, Kerala, though it is called as the land of gods, that I don't know. Most welcome. Once the COVID threat is over, you're all welcome to my place, Kerala. So sitting far away from Kerala, I face you, I interact with you, thinking that I have a product with me. It may be a new way of thinking or a different way of thinking with which you may agree or disagree. It doesn't matter. I am going to sell my product. So here I am, a possessor of an idea or a notion or a formula. There, somewhere, either in front of me or away, there are the prospective receivers of this idea, which I am going to convey to you. So I saw some sort of a parallelism between business and communication. When these two are merged together or fused together, what happens is that, I use the word fused, what happens is that it will be a fusion of milk and water. We don't know, the layman, of course, the technology can. The layman doesn't know exactly where milk is, where water is. Anyway, not too much of water, only a limited permissible way. It is this fusion of business into communication and communication into business that makes a business communication a successful one. Now let us see what the process is. When business communication starts, the product, which I do have with me, my idea or my product, moves from the possessor to the prospective buyer. When successful business communication proceeds, well, I am the marketing manager of a firm, and I'm sure by this evening, for the last 2 weeks, I have been working in a small town, and tomorrow I am packing off and back to my headquarters, and I feel rather satisfied because the product which my company launched has reached the customer because of my communication with the clients, with the prospective buyers. And after a few days or maybe a few months, when successful business communication ends, 3 or 4 or 5 marketing managers like me or field agents like me together assemble way back in the headquarters for a review meeting. And we have been serving for the past. And all of us believe that we succeeded in communicating with our clients in various parts of the world. And when successful business communication ends, it is not an end by itself. It triggers another business relation. Whether the company offers me another project or another assignment, it doesn't matter. Whether I am there in the picture or not, whether the company is in the picture or not. My successful business communication and similar communication of my colleagues in the rest of the world does not come to an end by itself, like all real communications. It triggers another business communication. The prospective buyers have already become the real buyers of the past. And those buyers will be looking for more in communication. When you are for the first time in a small group of strangers, and after half an hour's interaction with the others, and after sharing a few jokes and all those things, you feel quite comfortable. And that comfort triggers an invitation for more communication on your part. The other 5 or 6 who had been with you will be longing again to listen to you. The way you said a joke, the way you express yourself. So any piece of communication ends successfully exclusively by giving birth to another piece of communication. This reproductivity, this regeneration nature of communication is what sustains not only communication, but the world itself. World becomes comfortable to live in because one after the other, our communication ends successfully by giving birth to another piece of communication. So those who are going to be in business communication as well should realize the importance of this continuity. It's an infinite one. People change, products change, place change, but the way you interacted with the market, the way we communicated with the producers, the manufacturers on the one side, and the customers on the other side. It is the way of articulating the product. So they manufacture the product. We articulate the product. Even the defects in manufacturing can be rectified to a great extent in our articulation. A word of apology, a word of assurance, a promise of taking care in future. All these small pieces in business communication may rectify even a serious default at the manufacturing point. So this is the art of communication. Then narrowing down from business English to, business communication to business English. I'm not going to details of these things. I'm sure my two friends will be giving you more details. I'm just giving you a preamble, and I happen to be first just because of my old age. That is one advantage in India. The oldest will be the first. That way we are safe. Merit-wise, I'm sure my two other younger colleagues would be excelling far better than I do. Let us have a look at the structure, the grammar, or technically we call it the syntax of business English. Serve washes best. Serve washes best. Yes, Joshi is staying in the hostel and Joshi washes his clothes. In the hostel, there is no laundry facilities from outside, and because of COVID, Joshi washes his clothes. Here, Joshi is the doer of the action called washing. That is our plain English. But look at the business English. Serve washes best. In linguistics, we have a syntagmatic and paradigmatic relationship. Paradigmatically, see, serve has replaced Joshi. But the action, what Joshi does and serve does, is entirely different. Serve doesn't go to the bucket, nor to the washing machine. Serve doesn't do any willful action, whereas Joshi does all those things. But still, in this small sentence in business English, serve is the subject. That is what business English is. Certain things, or so many things, which are not permissible or which are not commonly used in ordinary English, are not used in business English, the other way around. Let me hurry up. Kaushik, stop me when it's time. And introduces for the first time in India. Who introduces? Suzuki? Maybe. Volkswagen? Maybe. The subject is not there. Introduces. The verb is important. The verb is the dominant factor. Now the second one. Business English has its own diction, its own style. No bathrooms, but glam rooms. Well, it has advertised the product more eloquently than an essay can do, a one-page write-up can do. No bathrooms, but only glam rooms. By our fittings, then your bathroom is a glamour room. Not just styles, but lifestyles. Look at the rhythm. Next, please. The business English also has its own way of foregrounding and backgrounding the most important idea. Slide next, please. That is, in English as opposed to Indian languages, going by rhetoric, has a special feature. English language, as opposed to most of the Indian languages, foregrounds the most important message in the first half, or preferably in the first one or two or three words of a sentence. In most of our languages, the nuclear message may be in the second half of the sentence. In English, it is the other way around. In business English, again, it has further advantage. It has its own positioning, foregrounding or backgrounding of ideas and facts. Look at this ad. Afraid to speak English? Join the live webinar. This is a special way of business English. And finally, it has its own registral variety or vocabulary. Crack the IAS interview. Interview and crack usually in ordinary English don't collocate. They don't go together. But in business English, you can crack an IAS interview and you won't have an increase or decrease of sales on the business page of an English newspaper, the Hindu, or say anything like that. You have only a surge or a dip in sales. These are some of the basic, factors which govern business English. This part I would like to take any more time. I'm sure my two younger colleagues will definitely be giving a very interesting and inviting lecture on these aspects. I thank once again the School of Communication, the university, and my student friend, Mr. Kaushik too. Let us listen to two more fruitful, interactive lectures. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. As you said, how old you will be, but still your teaching style and your talks all the time will be new to all of us. I'm sure our participant has taken much of interest in your talk, and thank you the way you correlated the business part and business English and communication aspect. It was really intensive, also insightful. And the theory you talk about, any product purchaser and prospective buyer thematic aspect also you covered up. That was really something to look forward to. I'm sure all our students also taken some interest in your lecture. Now moving to the second lecture. We are very much thankful to Dr. Sanjay Arora for accepting the invitation. He is presently working as head Department of English, Central University of Rajasthan. His areas of interest are English language teaching and applied linguistics. Dr. Arora has published several books and articles at national, international level. He is also presently the National President of English Language Teachers Association of India, that is called LTI. 10 scholars have already been awarded PhD degrees under his supervision, and 4 are currently pursuing their research under him. He is also the recipient of the Postdoctoral Award from University Grants Commission, UGC, New Delhi. Dr. Arora has also been a master trainee in Project High Tech, in which he has taught the teachers how to teach English communicatively. Now I request sir to present his deliberation for the session. Please, sir.
Thank you, Kaushik. And thank you, Professor Bhaskaran, for setting the tone for the day. Good afternoon, Vice Chancellor, sir, Pro Vice Chancellor, sir, Professor Bhaskaran, Professor Mrinal, teachers, students. So Professor Bhaskaran actually touched upon the advertising world, how the advertising world functions, how words are manipulated, how syntax is manipulated. So that was one aspect of business English that Professor Bhaskaran touched upon. And I'll be just taking you on to a different aspect, which is a more practical aspect. And I think most of the attendees in this session are MBA, doing their MBA or BBA. So assuming that you will be very soon working in the field, so my presentation here is divided into 3 parts. Number 1, I'll be talking about an apology letter. Number 2, I'll be talking about a meeting, how certain meetings are conducted. And thirdly, I'll just be briefly showing you the format of a CV and resume, which I think you all must be familiar with. So I'll just be acquainting you with some very basic formats of the two. And that will be the end of my presentation. I'll just share my slide here, and I'll skip the part that Professor Bhaskaran touched upon and move on to the other aspects here. I hope my slide is visible. Kaushik, can you confirm?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay. Yeah. So taking it on from Professor Bhaskaran, that when we are talking about business English, you have to have clarity, whether you're writing a letter, whether you are designing a tagline for an advertisement for a product. So whatever we are doing, or we have to write a letter, we have to conduct a meeting, prepare the minutes, or we have to even send our CV or resume. In all such conditions, clarity is very, very important, because in case you are not very clear, especially in the business world, people do not have much time. If you are not able to present what you want to appropriately in condensed words, so you will be losing out on business. And at times people may also feel quite frustrated on that. So here I'm showing you a sample of an apology letter. Just because of the limitation of time, I would not like to seek your inputs on that. I've underlined some parts of this letter, and at the outset, if you see, this letter seems to be a little scattered, and the phrases and the words that I've underlined here, they seem to be a little out of place or redundant, or probably cliches. So that is what we need to avoid in an apology letter. Because when we are writing an apology, say for a wrong delivery of a product or a service that has been delivered to the other end, to the customer's end, so you have to be very polite, and you have to acknowledge if something has gone wrong at your end. Because here the customer may feel quite offended at something that has gone wrong. So here, if the letter is scattered in this manner, if it is say split up into so many sentences, means your letter ideally should not be a one line, it should not have a one line paragraph. So that is one of the things that you need to keep in mind, because that becomes quite awkward, that after every line the paragraph is changing. Then we need to, the words that I had shown you, which were underlined, they are actually jargon ridden words or phrases. So that is what we need to be careful about, not to get into jargon. Be straight, hit at the point, just don't go beating about the bush, just don't go in for any circumlocution. So that is one thing that when we are getting into any kind of, say, a letter, whether it is an apology letter, or it is maybe an acknowledgement letter, a recommendation letter, or any permission, invitation, inquiry, anything that you are into, you have to be very clear, very precise, to the point, and don't waste words. Because if you are into unnecessary words, you are wasting the other person's time. So that you need to keep in mind. And the same thing applies also when we are talking about reports. I'm not touching upon the report, but even when you're writing reports or memos, or maybe any lab report or inspection report, any progress report related to any project. So everywhere these things are to be very carefully means you have to take care of these things. And then the paragraphing thing is very important. Now in this passage, if you look at this passage and see, and now if we look at the paragraphing, it seems that there are some 9-10 of these paragraphs that are coming up. But then the thought process, we need to see that when we need to club things together, we talk about cohesion and coherence. And I'm sure some of you who have some understanding of the technicalities of paragraphing would know that if there is this intersentential connection, which we call as cohesion, that is very important. And then the inter-paragraph connection also has to be established. So in between the paragraphs also there has to be connectivity, and in between the sentences also there has to be a link. So that is how we ensure paragraphing. And with the change of idea, the paragraph needs to change. So these are basic things, fundamental things, which I think most of you or all of you must be familiar with. So I'll just show you another draft of the same letter after we have discussed some of these things that are written here in this slide. So when we are talking about an apology letter, or any letter for that matter, the purpose of writing that letter should be stated at the outset. You should be very clear about what that letter is all about. So ideally, you will be talking about that in the subject. So if you have clarity about it, your reader will also have clarity about what this letter is going to talk about. And maybe after reading just the subject, it may be passed on to some other people who will be dealing more with those kind of complaints or apologies or inquiries. So maybe the departments will be split up. So accordingly, it will enable them to pass on that, say, letter for immediate address to various people in the department or the organization. Now, the first paragraph ideally has the subject matter and the purpose. And thereafter, you go on developing it depending on how long or how much of content you need to write on. So the second paragraph onwards, how many paragraphs will go beyond that? The content will be decided on the subject, means what exactly you want to talk on. So one paragraph will lead on to the other. And as I mentioned earlier, every change of idea will have a separate paragraph, and ideally you need to balance it. Means by change of idea, I don't mean that each paragraph should be a one-line paragraph change. So that also needs to be balanced. Then the last paragraph, you would like to means here you would have to be a little positive and very clear about what you want to say, whether you want to apologize or means say you want a favor, you want the company to act on your request. So what exactly that is all about, so that has to come in the final paragraph, where you will be requesting the company or the person to act accordingly, or like in this apology letter, means there is a repetition of that apology coming towards the end, and I'll show you it in the next slide. Now, long sentences are to be avoided here, because if the sentence goes long, by long sentences I mean complex, dense sentences, because you are actually not to show your knowledge or your erudition or your learning here. You have to put your idea across. You have to ensure that what you are saying, it gets communicated easily to the person across who's reading that mail or that letter from your end. So that is how it is. And the layout of the letter also is very important. So here I'll show you the revised draft of the same letter, and you can see how now things are clubbed together, and we have some kind of a balance. I would just like you to pay attention to the first paragraph and the last paragraph and see how that apology comes in again. Now, this is one of the ways of, this is one of the formats, and that's the British format. We go by two prevalent formats, the British and the American style, the American pattern, and the British format of letter writing. So here we have a paragraph indentation. So this is British style, and the more prevalent one is left aligned, where you do not have any indentation and it all goes left aligned. So it could be this way also. It's your choice. You can decide how to go about it. And then we move on to formal meetings. Now in meetings, like those of you who will work in the field, you'll find that there are very frequent meetings in companies. And every time a meeting is held, there is an agenda, minutes are to be prepared, records have to be maintained. So you need to be very sure about how to go about it, because you will be at top managerial positions gradually after some time once you pass out. So now, first of all, when we talk about meetings, we need to talk about the aims of the meeting, and then the competence, thereafter the agenda and the minutes. I'll just briefly tell you what exactly I mean by each of these. So when we talk about the aims, we are talking about the purpose, that what is the purpose of that meeting, and then you need to circulate it, ensure that all people who are expected or who are whom the meeting concerns should be present there. And if the notice is being sent maybe a week, 10 days in advance, so there could be a reminder mail that could be sent maybe a day before that, because people are in the midst of lot many things, and it is possible that they may forget. So that is why there is this need to remind. And competence is where you talk about the limitation of that meeting, that what can be discussed and what cannot be taken up. Like there'll be many things that people would like to discuss in that meeting, but given the time constraints, maybe you have a 1 hour meeting or half an hour meeting. So accordingly, you need to take up only the urgent things that you want to address and seek opinion on. And maybe there is a possibility that you may also seek opinion of people, or maybe some voting is required. So for that, you need to have time in hand. And then the agenda topics have to be circulated before, means along with that notice that goes, that what are the agenda points, so that people come mentally prepared, or they come up with their ideas, their suggestions. It can't be random. It cannot be that the meeting is called and at that point of time the agenda is elaborated on. So then you will not be able to get, because that just becomes a formality, and you'll not be able to get some ideas if seriously you want some from your team members. So it has to be quite clear and logically arranged. So agenda points have to be defined. And then the most important thing during and after the meeting is the preparation of the minutes, because that is a record that what all points were discussed, what was the agenda, and whether there was a voting done on some point, and how did it go on, who was in favor, how many of the attendees were against that particular say point that was floated during that meeting. So this record is very important, and the summary of all that has to be maintained date wise. So maybe a folder can be prepared that way. And if there are frequent meetings, so it could be a monthly record prepared. If there are meetings which are maybe quarterly, then accordingly means the recording can be decided how and who maintains the record. And ideally in the team, this responsibility could be given to one specific person who could maintain the minutes for every meeting that is conducted. So that is what I felt was another important thing which concerns business communication, business English. And for those of you who will be into the field, I think these things will be of help, and maybe very soon you'll be getting on to that. And those of you who are applying for placements and jobs, so here I have a format of a CV, and then there is another one of resume. So I'll just end with these two formats, and I'll just briefly explain you the difference between the two. A CV, which we call as curriculum vitae, is the British format of presenting your details. And those which have been put in bold, these are the essential ones. And the ones which are not put in bold, these are optional entries. You may bring them up, or you may even drop them. So profile is another important thing that I would like to briefly talk about. Now, when we talk about the profile, you have to, as Professor Bhaskaran was saying, it's a product on sale. So very soon you will also be selling yourself. You will also be telling the prospective employer how you have an edge over the others. So in the profile statement, you will be talking about all those positive features that enable you to become a more potential candidate for a particular post in that company. So all positive things, all positive statements will come here. And then the education and employment ideally has to come from the recent one to the uh, previous one. It will go in descending order. So the recent qualification, like you have done your MBA, so that will come first, and likewise BBA, and thereafter you'll go down. So that is how it will be in descending order, both in terms of education, and if you have some experience, so employment will also go down the same order that way. And if it is a resume format, so it will be somewhat like this. So it's just the change in the format. Otherwise, basically entries are not very different, except that objective. Now, I don't say objective will come in resume and cannot come in say CV, or the profile statement can come in a CV and not in the resume. Both the things can go there, means objective and profile statement can come together. And similarly, here also you can bring the profile statement. So depends on how what kind of a job you're applying for. So these are the two formats that I wanted to familiarize you with, and I think most of you must be already familiar with this. So with this, I end my presentation. Thank you for your patient listening. Over to you, Kaushik.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. As usual, you all elaborately narrated the technical issues about in the business English and communication aspect. You very well said about the minutes agenda, the business letter writing, and the format. I'm sure our participants has been benefited by your lecture over here. And any questions to the speaker, we'll take in the Q&A session. You can post your question in the chat box. The last speaker of the session, we'll moving forward to him. He is our own Dr. Mrinal Chatterjee sir. Dr. Chatterjee is the Professor of Communication and Regional Director in the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, IIMC, Dhenkanal, Odisha. A journalist and journalism teacher, media educator, creative writer, columnist, cartoonist, radio and television content developer. Dr. Chatterjee is all rolled into one. He is the author of the book History of Journalism in Odisha, which is the first major publication in journalism industry in the state. He has published more than 10 novels, 7 short story collections, and a series of columns in Odia dailies. He has published 5 books on journalism and mass communication. His recent book, Glossary of Terms for Media Persons, is a template for the better understanding of concepts used in communicative purpose. In 2013, Dr. Chatterjee has been honored with Odisha Living Legend Award by Odisha Diary for excellence in promoting journalism and mass communication. We are so fortunate to have you, sir. I now request Mrinal sir to talk to us and share his deliberation. Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaushik. Thank you, ASPM, for giving me this opportunity to speak to these students and esteemed speakers, Mr. Arora and Mr. Nair. Mr. Nair set the tone. He talked about the difference between English and business English. And I'm amazed at the clarity with which he explained the difference with examples. Business English has its own syntax, has its own diction, own style. And it does the foregrounding and backgrounding of ideas and facts. These are the key takeaways from Professor Nair's deliberation. Professor Arora spoke about business English, the practical application of business English. It requires clarity. How do you negotiate business communication better in English language? And how do you document a meeting, etc.? The practical aspect of a business English. So I guess I'll go and ask myself and we were present here in this webinar about the later part of the title. In a multilingual India, do we really need business, quote unquote, English? I did some study and I found out in 2011 census, 0.02% of population of India, they have taken English as their first language. 0.02%, 2011 census. If we factor first language, second language, and third language, because India is a multilingual country, so every one of us probably know 2, 3, 4 languages. If we factor first, second, third language, right, the number of speakers in English in India in 2011 was 10.67%. Compare that with other languages. Let's take Hindi. 43.63%. They consider Hindi as their first language. If we factor first, second, third, it will be 57% plus. If I talk about Bangla, first language, 8%. Taken first, second, third language is 8.85 language. Urdu, 4.19 and 5.18. Odia, 3.10 and 3.51. And English, the first language, is 0.02. In this situation, should we speak about business English, for God's sake? I ask myself this question. Do we have a fetish for English? Is it a colonial hang-up or something, hangover or something? And then I found out some answers to this question. English is the third most widely spoken language in the world. It's taught in 118 countries. It's commonly used around the world as a trade language, which is very important for us, and especially whoever is pursuing MBA or BBA. It's a diplomatic language. It's a language of diplomatic. It's a language of science, aviation, computers, diplomacy, and tourism. In India, this happens to be also an aspirational language. Aspirational language. This is where I think we must rethink about the importance of India importance of English in India. It's an aspirational language, and therefore you will find English language schools in every mohalla, every village in the country now, right? Speaking English, people think, can provide them a leg up in society, which may transform also into monetization. If I can speak English, then probably I can earn better. This is what some people think. Right, wrong, different issue. But when it's there in people's mind, it becomes important, right? More access. Another important thing about English is it provides you more access to internet. About 52%, I did some research on net and I found out this, about 52% of the world's most visited websites are displayed in English. And therefore, it provides you more access to knowledge, right? So these are the advantages of English. The point that I am trying to make, but before that, I have a small presentation. Whatever I have given you, the statistics are words only. Unless you see it visually, you will not appreciate the impact of it. I just 3-4 slides only. I'll just show you. Hold on for just a sec. Now, can you see this?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Right, great. The point that I'm trying to make is why Indian languages are increasingly becoming important in business ecosphere, right? See the language spread in India. The yellow one is Hindi. See the spread, and that is where only the speakers, first language speakers of Hindi are there, right? There are people who can understand Hindi across India. Second, look at the number of speakers in Indian languages. This probably will give us more clarity, right? And now here is one interesting set of data that is important for us to peruse, right? This is first, the first column is first language speaker. This is the percentage, the next column. Second language and third language, and then percentage of the total population, right? Look at here, Hindi total, who can figure out Hindi, who can communicate in Hindi is 57%, English is just about 10%. But if you look closely at the numbers, you will find another very interesting point. Very interesting point. Often, the most interesting points somehow are lodged in fine prints, right? And here is the most important point. See, the first and second, first language speaker of English is barely 0.02%. But if you factor second language, third language, for example, if somebody speaks Hindi at home, but is also comfortable in English, so English becomes his second or third language. So that kind of people, they constitute 10.67%. Just calculate the differential. This is 0.02% and this is 10.67%. Right? Look at the difference. That precisely mean if you are looking at pan-India and if you are looking at upper class, right, then English is a better link language across the country. That is the important point that I am trying to make. And for students who are pursuing business administration to be managers of business houses, I guess this is an important point to remember for them. If you are trying to communicate something pan-India and to upper class, right? It's the English. It's English in which you communicate. But if you are thinking of targeting the hoi polloi, we need to factor Hindi and other region-specific language. I think this point has gone across to the students and participants of this webinar, that no longer we can relegate Indian languages to this side. They are becoming mainstream. That is the point business managers now have to keep in their mind. English is all right. We must know business English, because as I told you, the spread is pan-India. People who are policymakers, people who are in the hem of affairs, they would like to communicate with in English. If you are trying to move international, yes, English and probably Spanish, right? But if you are doing business, trying to do business in India, gradually, Indian languages are taking center stage. This is one point that our future business managers must remember. Thank you very much. And I'll expect a lot more questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving a brief and elaborative discussion about the importance of English in rural or in urban India. And so also you talked about the aspirational English language and access to internet, how it is being given a chance to the persons of business managers. It is giving a chance to showcase their talents. Also, it's really important to ask started a question asking important of English in the statistical way, how it can be done, and in the various sectors of India. Thank you so much, sir. Now we'll move forward to the Q&A session. We have a number of questions. The first question is by Romit Tuli. She is asking about how can she is a student, a researcher in English literature and teaching business communication to students. She's asking, there is no degree in communication skills to Nair sir. Professor Bhaskaran Nair, please can you elaborate on this?
Sorry, Kaushik, could you repeat the question?
Yes, sir. She's asking about, is there any degree relating to communication skills in India?
Degree in communication skills?
No, sir. My question is, why there is no research degree in communication skills? See, if we go for IGNOU and all the universities are providing communication skills in bachelor's degree. But the way you talked about how we can use English to business English, so we don't have any research degree related to that. So this is my question.
I don't know whether I'll be the right person to answer that question itself, because to the best of my knowledge, there is no such narrowing down. Perhaps Arora ji may be, better aware of these things, since Professor is in touch with other universities all over India. Maybe. Why it is not so popular is that I can answer. Because only in the first language situation, that is when English is the first language, we can have such sharp narrowing down into, say, this type of segments. Since ours is English as a second language, we happen to begin with the so-called 3-century-old literature-based, reading-based English language teaching. Irrespective of all the methodologies and all promises for future as well, English still is a library language in India. It is confined to library. From library, with our effort, how much can we drag it to the kitchen? From one end of the house, you have the study, your library. From there, it depends on your own effort to drive it, to drag it, to push it, to pull it to the kitchen. Kitchen is the heart of a home. It depends on the self-effort. In such a situation, if we have a collective of student community who demands for such a specialization, definitely these days a university will come forward to cater to the needs of such a community. That's what I think. Otherwise, the present pattern goes by the reading-based library English language and then a few diversions. The availability of the courses, I think Professor Arora ji may be able to answer.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Romi, as far as this research degree in communication skills is concerned, do you think a degree will enable a person to communicate better? Is it that paper degree which is going to help? Or is it the practical experience of communication that is actually going to help? Because see, these skills are considered to be basic skills. We are talking about these skills at this level, but then these things should come right from the very beginning, right from your school days onwards. These things should be inculcated. And all these things should go together, integrated together. The listening, reading, speaking, and writing all should go together. But the irony is that for a very long time, we were taking recourse to the grammar translation method, which only focused on reading and writing skills. As a result, listening and speaking were neglected skills. So early 1990s, when communicative language teaching was introduced in India, at that time, many of the schools, or I think all the schools of CBSE adopted that. But at that time, I was also teaching as a part-time teacher in one of the CBSE schools, and I realized that it was just lip service that was being done. And there was no practical implementation of communicative language teaching. So things, when they prolong, when they don't happen, when they should, so expect degrees to do that work. So that's why I think no thought has gone into this research degree in communication skills. But yes, now that you asked the question, we will definitely be pondering over it in our discussion meetings, and we'll try to see how that can be taken up. But then degrees will not help. This is my take on that.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
The second question is coming from the northern part of our country, asked by Ritika Shinna. She asked that as speakers of English as a foreign language, how essential is accent neutralization for effective business communication? Also, he is adding another question, that is it needed at all in a country where we celebrate the linguistic diversity of a multicultural nation? It's most about the accent neutralization.
I guess we need it to some extent. I mean, you can't pronounce English words as per your own sweet will. So some kind of accent correction is needed, but you don't have to take to the Victorian English level. You don't have to do that. When we have our own way of speaking, and that will not change in a jiffy. We Bengalis, we will pronounce bus as bus. We will continue to do that, right? So allow us to do that, but don't take it to too extreme level. That's it. Yes, some amount of accent correction is required.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering for that question. Another question is coming from our own faculty colleague from our department, university. What is the greatest communication challenge for management students? Asked by Sunil Das Pendi. What is the greatest communication challenge for management students?
It's not only for management students, for all students, for all practitioners of communication. The greatest challenge is to figure out what to communicate.
Okay, thank you. Another question is asked by Anita Smith. She's asking that communication skills is not only one aspect of competency. It has the potential of research as part of a degree in ELT. You can elaborate on this one, sir. This is a statement. So I think she's giving a feedback of that.
But of course, it has potential of research, of course. And there is no to what opinions about that. Of course, it has great potential for research. What is the question here?
So maybe I think she's giving her own feeling about it. Sir, as I was wondering, I have a question to Sanjay sir. Sir, in a subject like in English language communication skills and also in business English, what is the role of ESP, English for specific purposes, in a country like India? How can we relate to that?
Well, Kaushik, see, when we talk about English for specific purposes, we are talking about English in a very narrowed confine. Now, whether it could be English for maybe tourism sector, maybe English for tourist guides, or maybe English for advertising, for example, what Professor Bhaskaran was talking about initially, how to go for copywriting, how to go for ad creation, content writing and all that. So yes, and people have been talking about it. It's not something very recent. These things have been talked about, debated, discussed, and finally dropped. Because takers of these for these courses, first of all, universities do not come up with these courses because there are not too many takers. Most of the aspirants who are doing maybe their masters or they go in for any degree, they actually are targeting a job in government sector. It could be a school, it could be a college, it could be a university. So ideally everyone targets that. No one looks at the other branching offs that are coming up through that. Very few would explore the option going into advertising or maybe translation. So that's why universities have never dared to go in for these courses. I remember there was one university which started here in Rajasthan, but then it came to an end after there was a change of government, and they were thinking of some such similar courses, but then the problem came in that there is no net exam in these courses, so there will be very few takers for this. As a result, that discussion was just confined to a discussion and no such course could be framed or designed. But now that the new education policy focuses on skill development, employment creation, so I think now these things will be coming up because now options beyond academics will also be open.
Yes, sir. Very true, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I'm sure that our participants have been taken all sort of benefited, availing all sort of beneficial points by our or the speakers in today's webinar. Before we conclude the session, I will take this opportunity to thank people associated with this webinar to make it a possible event. I am thankful to all the esteemed panelists for accepting our invitation and connecting to us, finding time from their valuable schedule. I am sincerely thankful to our beloved President and founder of ASBM University, Professor Dr. Biswajit Patnaik sir, for his constant support in innovative ideas for the betterment of academia. I am very much thankful to Professor Kalyan Shankar Ray, Vice Chancellor ASBM University, for his valuable suggestion in finalizing the theme and title of the webinar. I would also thank Professor Falgu Niranjana, Madam, Pro Vice Chancellor of the University, for her timely advice and guidance. I extend my thanks to all the participants for their interest in our webinar. I also thank the registrar, faculty friends, technical team of the webinar, and last but not the least, our dear students of ASBM University for their presence and support. I once again thank you all with a hope to meet with many more such events in the forthcoming time. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaushik. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir.
Nice meeting you, Professor Bhaskaran, Professor Mrinal.
Nice meeting you, Professor Arora, Professor Nair. Hope to see you in Rajasthan.
Yeah, sir. You're welcome anytime when you want to, when the situation improves.
Yeah, when the situation improves. And Mr. Nair, where you are based in Kerala? You are muted, Mr. Nair.
Professor Nair, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Northern part, Kannur district.
IMC has a campus in Kerala. It's in Kuttai, the central part of Kerala.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And thank you, Kaushik. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Welcome to Kerala, all of you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.